Are you cheating? Look to me in the eyeballs. You cheating? If you're tracing, you're cheating. Well, actually, yes and no. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to give you the Cliff Notes version. I'm going to post a lengthier version for those who want to dig into the nitty-gritty of this, but here's the Cliff Notes version of it. That's a yes and no question, depending on where you're at. If you're a student and you're tracing, in my opinion, you're cheating because you haven't learned how to draw. You don't have the skills to be able to translate a 3D object onto a 2D space or a photograph accurately. Why else would you be tracing? Okay, unless you've pissed away all your time with your other classes, and now you're up against a hard deadline. I know some people use that excuse. Been there myself, but I've never traced. I think in 30 years I've had to trace one thing because of a hard deadline. I literally had to have it done the next day, having got the job about 12 hours before. But and I still look at that painting to this day and I want to punch a hole through it. So yes, if you're a student and you haven't acquired those skills competently, to me it's cheating. Okay, unless of course you're taking your own drawing and projecting it up, like a 10-foot drawing or something where the scale is going to be thrown off. You can't really accurately draw it even if you are a competent draftsman. Again, right now I'm a professional. If I got to do a 6-foot tall painting of a face, I'm projecting my own drawing. I'm not going to take the photograph and project it, but that's what I'm going to do. Okay, if you're a professional illustrator who has hard deadlines like a Drew Struzan, doing movie posters, those type of things where you have celebrities, movie stars, this type of thing, who have in their contract their head's got to be 20% bigger than somebody else's, or this type of thing. I can't imagine not using a projector to trace that down, just because of the things that are involved in creating that. If you want to get into the details of that, go watch it's a documentary on Drew Struzan. If you don't know who that is, shame on you. He did Back to the Future, posters, Indiana Jones, the first 3 Star Wars films, the triptych for the re-release of the Star Wars Empire, Jedi, all those type of things, and about 200 other films. So in that instance, yes, I think it's okay. So in a nutshell, if you don't have the skills to do it, I would say no. If you do have the skills to do it at a high level, then yes, it just becomes a tool like anything else. Okay? But if you don't have the skills, it becomes a crutch. And I've seen it plenty of times. I know professionals who use that crutch. They just barely got to that level where they could get a likeness maybe, but not competently and not every time. Let me just go back and we'll just do it this way. And what I find interesting is that the majority of those people doing that, they may be doing figure work, but these figures are arbitrary. They're not doing likenesses. They're just figure paintings. Nobody knows who they are, cares who they are. So what's the need in tracing? There's no deadline. There's no rush. There's no likeness. That's kind of where I have a problem with it. Okay. The next thing, I think we could just boil it down to this. And this is actually a bit pet peeve of mine because of the stuff I see online and people trying to teach people how to do drawings of different kinds, paintings, illustration, you name it, and they don't share their process. This is the second part. If you're ashamed to tell people your process, hey, yeah, I got a piece of illustration board, I really like this photograph, I projected it up, I traced, I used a light table, whatever, I traced it, and then this is how I go about putting my paint on it. Hey, at least you're being forthcoming, you're telling people how you're doing it. But if you feel the need, and you're like, to hide that, and I don't care what level you're at, there's a problem there. And you're not just being dishonest with other people, you're being dishonest with yourself. And that's really the only way you can, I think you can really kind of judge this is, and I'll conclude with this, is that you've got to ask yourself, why you're creating artwork. If you're just doing it to make money, knock yourself out. Whatever method you want to do, I could care less. You know, if you want to trace, you don't want to trace, whatever. That's all you're in it for. But if you're in it for personal development, then yeah, you need to become competent. I'll add one last thing here is that one of the issues I do have with tracing too is it destroys artistic style until you become competent. That's why I say as a student, don't do it, or at least for the first few 5-10 years of your professional career until your style's established. Because if everybody traced, that's all we'd have is just kind of pretty lame, stiff paintings, drawings, this type of stuff. And you wouldn't have the J. Scott Campbells, the Ryan Otleys, the Frank Frazettas, all these type of people that make up stuff out of their head, or they embellish on something that they're seeing. They show their own interpretation of it. It's not just a copy. And that's where I find the real value is. So if it's a tool because you're competent, thumbs up. If it's a crutch because you're not competent, and at the end of the day, you say to yourself, you know what? If I did this on my own without tracing, the results would be subpar. But if tracing takes you over the top, you got a hole in your armor. If you don't use tracing and your pieces turn out just as good, just as competent, or even better, you're at the level where you can use it. And I'll leave it at that. Hey, please like and subscribe. I hope you enjoyed this. Any questions, comments? I'd love to hear them down in the comment section. Thanks for joining me.